Hi, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Pearson, your elementary ELL teacher. Today, you're going to write a retell of the story The Big Race by Pam Munoz Ryan. And this is from First Grade Journeys, Lesson 14. So, for this lesson, you will need a piece of paper and a pencil because at the end of our review, you're going to challenge yourself. And you're going to answer this question. What happened in the story? Write a retell. And we're going to use our traffic colors to help us. Green means go, start your retell, or say what happened at the beginning. So you're going to say first, then we're going to slow down and say what happened in the middle, later, and next, and then we're going to stop and talk about what happened at the end or the finish. Last. So here's our learning target. I can write a retell of the story, The Big Race, using complete sentences. Success criteria. That means, how will you know you're successful at writing a retell of the story, The Big Race, using complete sentences? Well, here are our steps to success. This is what we're going to do to help us become successful and to help us reach our learning target. I will, number one, say and match the characters and setting. Number two, I will say and match the lesson or moral of the story, what the characters learned. Number three, put the retelling pictures in the correct sequence or order. Number four, I will say and then write the sentences to each picture, saying what happened first, later, next, and last. And then finally, I will check my writing using my writing checklist. So, The Big Race is either a fantasy story, and fantasy means things that cannot happen, or it's a reality story, and reality means things that can happen. Well, the genre or type of literature of The Big Race is fantasy or fantasy stories. And here's our noticings. Fantasy story is a make-believe story. Sometimes there are magical places, magical things happen. Animals might act like humans. Animals might wear clothes. There might be monsters, aliens, or dinosaurs. Animals might be extinct in real life. There can be events that can't happen, and the story might be funny. So, characters. Characters are the people, animals, or objects in a story. Setting. Setting is where the story takes place. Sequence. Sequence is the order things happen in a story. So you are going to write words like these: first, next, last, which tell us the beginning of the story, the middle, and the end. So let's retell the story out loud using these sentence frames, retell of the big race. So the characters are, who are the characters in the story? The characters are, well, if you remember, the characters are Red Lizard, Roadrunner, Snake, the Mouse, and Cottontail, the rabbit, a cottontail rabbit. Where does the story take place? The setting is, well, the setting is a track outside. So let's put our pictures in the correct sequence or order. First, later, next, and last. So first, what did Red Lizard want? First, Red Lizard wants, first, Red Lizard wants to win the race so he can have cake. Later, what happens later in the story? Later, the 5 animals later, the 5 animals get ready to start the race. They all anticipate winning. That means they all expect to win. Next, what happens next? Next, Red Lizard next, Red Lizard wins the race because of his fast pace. He says, "Watch me eat this cake." And last, what does Red Lizard decide to do? Last, Red Lizard sees how much his 4 friends want the cake. He decides to share it. So, in the end, Red Lizard is a good friend because why is he a good friend? Red Lizard is a good friend because he shares with his friends. So, Red Lizard is a good pal because he shares with his friends. All right, now it's the end of our review. It's time to challenge yourself. You will need that piece of paper and pencil now because you're going to answer the question, what happened in the story? Write a retell. And you're going to use the words first, later, next, and last. But before we do that, we're going to review how we write. We're going to review our writing checklist and also the fact that you need to say each sentence out loud before you write it. So before you write anything, I want you to say each of your sentences out loud before you write them. And here's our writing checklist. When you're writing, make sure you use finger spaces between your words. Make sure you use punctuation like periods or commas. Make sure you use uppercase letters at the beginning of a sentence. And make sure you sound out unknown words that you don't already know how to spell. Write the sounds you hear. And then my favorite, reread each of my sentences. Read them to make sure they make sense. All right, so keep in mind this writing checklist as you write. All right, now it's time to really answer the question in writing. Your turn. What happened in the story? Write a retell. And here's our traffic colors. So the start or the beginning. First, Red Lizard wants. What does Red Lizard want? So say it out loud. First, Red Lizard wants. Okay, now that you know what your complete sentence is, you are going to write this green sentence and finish it with your own words. First, Red Lizard wants, and then finish your sentence. So push pause and write your sentence. And when you're finished writing your green sentence, push play. All right, now we're going to slow down and talk about what happened in the middle of the story. So later, the five animals get. So say your sentence out loud. Later, the five animals get. Okay, now that you said your sentence, you will need to push pause, write your complete sentence using these sentence frames, and when you're finished with your first yellow sentence, push play. All right, we're going to slow down again and continue what happened in the middle. Next, red lizard wins. So say your sentence out loud. Next, red lizard wins. Okay, after you say your sentence out loud, you need to push pause, write your complete sentence, and when you're finished with the second yellow sentence, push play. All right, now we're at the end of the story or the finish. Last, Red Lizard decides. What does Red Lizard decide to do? Say it out loud. Last, Red Lizard decides. And when you've said your sentence out loud, I want you to push pause, write your red sentence, and when you're finished writing your red sentence, push play. All right, now it's time to check your work. I want you to look at your four sentences and make sure, did you have finger spaces between your words? Did you use punctuation, like a period at the end of your sentence? Did you use uppercase letters at the beginning of your sentence or capital letter? Did you sound out any unknown words you didn't already know how to spell? And my favorite, did you reread each of your four sentences to make sure that they make sense? So if you need to, push pause. Make sure you have your finger spaces, punctuation, uppercase letters, that you sounded out unknown words, and that you reread all of your sentences. So push pause, make sure you've done that for all four sentences. And when you're finished, push play. All right. At the top of your paper, I want you to write your learning target reflection. How do you think you did? I can write a retell of the story The Big Race using complete sentences. Would you give yourself a 4? I could teach this lesson. I easily retold the story in writing using the sentence starters. I also used my writing checklist for all my sentences. Or would you give yourself a 3? I retold the story in writing using the sentence starters. I also used my writing checklist for most of my sentences. Or would you give yourself a 2? I retold some of the story in writing and used my writing checklist for some of my sentences. Or would you give yourself a 1? I did not retell the story and did not use my writing checklist. How do you think you did? 4, 3, 2, or 1? All right. Now you can, if you want, you can look at your writing and also look at my example. Here's my example. What happened in the story? Write a retell. So first, Red Lizard wants to win the race. so he can have the cake as the prize. First, Red Lizard wants to win the race so he can have the cake as the prize. Later, the five animals get ready to start the race. They all want to win. Next, Red Lizard wins the race because of his fast pace. Last, Red Lizard decides to share his cake with his friends. All right, boys and girls, I hope you had fun writing the retell for the big race. Thank you for writing with me. Have a great day.